Hi everyone, Victor here again, and in today's lesson we're going to continue with the basic Linux OS management skills to have part 1. In our previous lesson, I discussed about the run target or modes that we have, and we're going to continue with that lesson. You should know that both rescue and emergency modes are special modes used for system recovery and troubleshooting, but they serve slightly different purposes and offer different levels of functionality. So, for example, if your OS is not booting up, you will need to boot to either rescue or emergency mode to recover your system. And we already discussed how to access these modes in the previous lesson. You should also know that you can access these modes by selecting it from the boot menu if they are available. Apart from these methods we described in the previous lesson, there are other ways to boot into this mode, and we'll look at how to do that as we go on in this lesson. This mode, especially the rescue mode, is known as the single user mode in the 6V unit systems. And in series 1 of this course, I mentioned and demonstrated 3 or 5 ways thereabout of booting into the single user mode, which is also commonly known as the rescue or emergency mode. The single user mode basically just means that one or single user, which is the root user, so that is the only user that can log into that system at that time. No other user can log in. So it makes sense because it is the root user that can perform recovery in this mode. So these modes are basically used for maintenance and troubleshooting. For example, repairing of bad file systems, resetting a lost root password, editing the FSTAR file to make the system boot properly, and etc. And that is why it can also be called maintenance mode. However, there is no particular or specific shelf for maintenance mode. The only mode we have a specific shelf for are the rescue and the emergency modes. And of course, when you're in the rescue mode and the run level command is working, if you just use the command run level, you'll see that you're in run level 1. And if you're in emergency mode, if you use the command run level, you will get the parameter or the value unknown. And like I've mentioned in the previous lesson, that there is no numerical mapping for this mode. So having understood the relationship between these modes and how they are being used, let's now understand the differences between booting into rescue mode and emergency mode. But before we do that, I would want to do that in the action time section. But before we do that, let's talk about talk more about this mode so that we can really understand the differences between the rescue and emergency mode. So let's talk about the purpose. For rescue mode, yeah, it is used for troubleshooting and repairing a system that has encountered issues preventing it from starting normally. And for emergency mode, it is used for more critical recovery tasks when the system is in a severely broken state. So let's talk about functionality too. For rescue mode, it provides a minimal single user environment with essential services and mounts the root file system in read-write mode, and all local file systems would also be mounted. Networking and some other services might also be started. They might not be started by default, but for emergency mode, it provides the most minimal environment possible with the root file system mounted in read-only mode and no other file systems mounted. Only the most essential or no services at all are even started. No networking, no sockets are established, nothing. You will just have a raw shell. And emergency mode is suitable for debugging purposes. Well, I've with my years of experience, I've noticed that for some systems, right, when you put them to emergency mode, I think Ubuntu, you would see that the root file system is mounted with read write, and really I don't know why that is. Well, it's your if when you're troubleshooting, it's your job to check, by saying if it's booted to read write, if the root file system is booted to read write or not. And if it's not booted to read write, of course, you can remount the root file system to be a read write. We'll also look at how to do that as we go on in this course when we get to the action time section. So another thing to look at is the typical use case. So rescue mode, it's fixing configuration errors, recovering lost files, and performing system maintenance. You can also reset your root password and etc. All of that in the rescue mode. And in emergency mode, that can be used to resolve serious issues such as file system corruption, repairing the boot process, or fixing critical system files. So really the key difference and the summary between those modes are that for rescue mode, it's used for general troubleshooting and maintenance, and for emergency mode, it is used for critical recovery tasks when the system is in a severely compromised state. Like someone said, emergency mode is a root shell and that's it, period. Nothing else is established. While rescue mode, on the other hand, has tools to help you get started handling the computer in a reasonable manner, still as root though. There's another important thing you should know, because there are situations whereby you will not be able to boot your system into rescue mode or emergency mode when your system is broken. And when you are in that situation, the only way to recover your system is to use a rescue media. So a rescue media is a separate bootable device. It can be a USB stick or your ISO image, CD/DVD drive that contains a minimal Linux environment used for system recovery and maintenance. So you boot your computer from the rescue media by passing the installed OS entirely. And this is useful, like I said, if the installed system is so damaged that it cannot boot into any of these modes, including rescue or emergency mode. So this is how you would normally do it. You would boot your system into the live ISO image, and which is rescue media, and that rescue media would be used as the OS disk, while the damaged OS will be used or mounted as the data disk. And you should also know that whenever you use a rescue media, it is also going to give you a rescue shell to work with. So in summary, we've been talking everything we're talking about, right? The types of shells or modes to work with whenever your system is badly damaged or whenever your system needs recovery. And we've talked about the rescue shell or mode, we've talked about the emergency shell or mode, and we've also talked about the rescue media. So we're going to start with the Red Hat Enterprise Linux system before we look at the Ubuntu system. Like I mentioned that I've extensively thought about how to boot to single user mode in series 1 of this course, and you'll see that this is the documentation, the article for the series 1. I'll be dropping the link to this particular article in the description box below, and you would see that in in the series one, I mentioned three methods in which you can boot into the single user mode. This is the first method. We have the second method, and we have the third method. So we're going to look at these three methods apart from the ones we've used before. And we're going to look at this in both the Red Hat and the Ubuntu system. I just also want you to know that the first and the second method will still need you to put in your password before you can, you know, work in the emergency mode. Yeah, and the first and second method will take you to the emergency mode. So if your system is not really broken, you will still need to give in your password before the system can then, take you into the emergency mode. So let's just get to our black screen. So I'm just going to restart the system. So I can come here and say restart guest. So now I can press the E to edit the connect line. So I can just make this bigger. So with the first method, of course, I'm going to come to the Linux line here, and I can say, so instead of read only, I can change this to read write. So say read write init initialize equals slash sysroot slash bin slash bash. So meaning that the system is going to boot into this single user mode. So either of, like I said, either of rescue mode or emergency single user mode. However, if you're using this method like I've mentioned, it's going to boot into the emergency single user mode. And you can see that it's asking us to give a password for maintenance. So I'm just going to give the password, and yeah, so the system has taken us to the single user mode. The most important thing is, of course, when you want to repair your system, you need to check how your root file system is being mounted. So I can just use mount, and then you can see here that the root file system is mounted as read write, and that's because we've edited the kernel line to make it put into read write mode. And another thing you would see is that it is mounted on sysroot. I also explained what sysroot is in the series one of this course. And you know using some of these methods that we're using now would make the system or would make the root file system to be mounted on slash sysroot, and of course to be able to perform some tasks and make some changes on the system, the root file system is required to be mounted on the root, that's the slash. And to do that, we need to make sure that we logically mount the root file system on slash, and we can use that by using the chroot tool. That chroot tool would logically mount the real root file system. So this is not the real root file system. So we need to logically mount the real root file system, and to do that, you can just use the command chroot. So we can use the command chroot slash sysroot, and we can say enter, and now I can perform any activities I want to perform. If I do password, let's say I want to change the password for root. You see that I can do that here, but because I'm not doing that, I'm just going to say enter, right? So that's the whole idea. So for this is one of the methods. We're going to look at another method. So I'm just going to restart the system again. So I'm just going to say restart guest. and then we edit the kernel line again. Then I can make this bigger. So the second method on this same Linux line, I'm going to add break. So this the first method we use and the second method we use, really it will do nothing on Ubuntu systems. When you use this method, nothing is going to happen. So you don't need to use the first method and the second method on Ubuntu system. So now if I put in the parameter rd.break, I can then say Control X to boot. So let's see where it's going to take us to here. So it's taking us to the emergency mode, and then we need to give the root password. For previous radar systems, it doesn't even take you to this mode. You don't even have to give password. It just takes you directly to the shell. But again, from RHEL 9 and above, things have changed. So now that I'm in the single user mode, I need to ascertain, how my root file system is being mounted. And of course, I can do mount. And you can see here that the root file system is still mounted on sysroot, and again, it's mounted as read only, meaning that I cannot do anything. So I need to remount the root file system as read write. And for me to do that, I'm going to just use the command mount hyphen 0 o so say remount to read write, and don't forget that it's still staying on it's still mounted on slash root. You can see that the root file system here is still mounted on slash sysroot, and that's how we're mounting this to slash sysroot. And then I can say enter, and then if I do mount again, you can now see that it's been mounted as read write. And like I mentioned, that we need to always mount the root file system before we can work, because as it is right now, it's mounted on slash sysroot. And I said that the tool that will enable us to do that is the chroot tool. This tool would make us to logically mount the real root file system. So we will now say chroot slash sysroot, and I can say enter, and then I can perform any activity that I want to perform. So for example, let's say I want to change the root password again. So if I say password root, we're not going to change it, but so it's just you know telling me that I can change the root password from this place. And of course, if you lose the root password, and you don't have to even come into this method, because it's asking you to give in the root password before you can even have to get into this shell. So what's the essence? So really, I think the first and second method, to me, I have not really seen the use for RHEL 9. Maybe there are some other use cases, right? But I don't think I would want to go through this method, right? So if I do mount, I doubt if that command would work here. So it's not going to work anymore because the boot file system has been logically mounted. So yeah, this is the second method. And for the third method, so I'm just going to reboot the system again. Just going to come here and say restart guest. And like I've mentioned, these two methods will not work on Ubuntu systems here. This third method is the real G. This would also this third method would also work on Ubuntu system, and this is why I said you should normally I would use the third method starting from Red Hat 9 and above, and for even Ubuntu systems. So I can just come here for the third method. I'll come to the Linux line here, and I'm going to edit the parameter. So at the end of the line, I will just say init equals slash bin slash bash, and I can say Ctrl X to boot into the single user mode. So you can now see that it's not asking me for any password, right? So let's do run level. Let's see if that command would work here. So it's not working here. So the first thing, like I said, check your root file system, check where it's mounted, and check if it's mounted as read only or read write. So you can see here that the root file system is mounted as read only, however, it's not mounted on sysroot. It is mounted well here. So we don't have to use the chroot command there. The only thing we need to do is to remount it to be read write. So to do that, of course, we can just say mount -o, then remount read write. This time around is the slash, that's the root file system itself, because it's not mounted on sysroot. So I can say enter, and then if I do mount again, mount should work here again. So you can see that it's been mounted as read write, and I can perform any activity I want to perform here. So again, let's say I want to recover the root password. I can just say root password root enter enter enter, so that nothing would happen. So this is the third method, and we're also going to look at how to use the rescue media to recover, how to how to boot into the single user mode with the rescue media as well. So now we're going to look at how to use the rescue media to recover a damaged Linux operating system for Red Hat. So I'm just going to power on this VM. So I'm just going to say power on to firmware, and that's because I've already attached the rescue media, which is the ISO image or the live CD, to this VM, which is representing the bad or damaged operating system. So what I'm going to do next is to make sure that this bad operating system in quote is being booted with the live CD or live ISO image. So I'm just going to go to the boot option here. You can see that CD-ROM is the first, as the ISO image is the first bootable drive. So if it is not here, you can put it here. So for example, if hard drive is your first bootable drive, you need to change it to the CD-ROM. Just press Shift plus to take it up. So now you can see that when my bad operating system is booting up, it's going to boot up to the live ISO image, which is the CD-ROM drive. So I can now say F10 to save and exit. So I can say yes, and then we're going to wait for the system to boot up. So now you can see that I have different options here. I'm just going to expand the screen. You can see I have installed test troubleshooting. So I'm going to click on troubleshooting, and I have different options here. Install Red Hat, rescue Red Hat, run a memory test. What we want to do is to rescue a Red Hat enterprise in your system. So on this line, I'm going to press enter, and we're going to wait for the system to boot up to that rescue mode. Just going to expand the screen again. So while the system is booting up, I'll pause the video, and when the system is done booting up, I would continue with the video. Okay, before I pause the video, I just want to tell you that today at work we had a Linux system being down, and I was called to rescue the system, and I brought up that system. It's actually an Oracle Linux 8 system, the application guys just called in and said they cannot reach the system. And when I checked from the console, I realized that the system was putting into the emergency mode without asking me for password. I did my general CTL funeral to see the logs. I did some troubleshooting steps, which I will tell you as we go on in this course. Yeah, so yeah, it took some time because the system was a bit badly damaged, and yeah, the system later came up and everyone was happy. All right, so now I can pause my video. And when this is done, I'm going to resume the video. So you can see that the system has booted up, and you can see what is saying rescue. The rescue environment will now attempt to find your Linux installation and mount it under the directory /mnt /sysroot. So, like I explained in the previous, I think when I was explaining when we're looking at the understanding the subject matter, I said that the live CD, the live environment is going to act as your operating system, as your OS disk, while the damaged environment as the damaged Linux OS is going to be as your data disk. And that's what the system is saying, that the rescue environment will now attempt to find your Linux installation and it will now mount it under the directory. So the damaged Linux OS is going to be mounted under this directory, and you can then make any changes required to your system. So it's saying choose one to proceed with this step. You can also choose your file system's read only instead of read write by choosing two. And if for some reasons this process does not work, choose three. And which is true, if your system is really badly damaged, the first option will not work. So we're going to look at the first option and the third option. So I'm just going to press enter, one and enter. So when I do this, that means I want the system to automatically mount the damaged OS under /mnt /sysroot for me. And now you can see that here it's saying rescue shell. When rescue shell, your system has been mounted under this directory. And it's also telling me that if I would like to make the root of my system the root of the active system, then I can use this command. Meaning that if I use the chroot /mnt /sysroot command, that means that my system is now going to be mounted as the OS disk itself and not the data disk. But now it's being mounted as the data disk, so I can say enter. And that's why if I now want to work on my system, I have to go to this directory, which is cd/mnt/sysroot. Yeah, I think it's also, if you also go to sys image, it should be the same thing. I feel so. In RHEL 8 here, I feel so. So yeah, now we are in sysroot, and that's why if I do ls, you can see that this is my system. And that's why if I do cat etc, for example, fstab file, let's say I want to edit the fstab file, you can see that this is where I can edit the fstab file. Let's say I want to work on the root file system itself, I can just say cd root and do whatever thing I want to do here. Let's say I want to work on the boot directory. On the boot directory, I can go to cd boot and then do whatever thing I want to do. So this is how I can recover the system by by using the rescue media. And like the system has said that we can also do chroot. If I do chroot slash sysroot, like the system has said. So let's do something. If I do cd, and if I do cat etc fs tab here, this is not my fs tab, this is the live cds fs tab, and you see that's why you have all of these things. My real fs tab file for damage os is in the directory cd/mnt /sysroot, and then I can now check whatever directory I want to check for my system. And again, if I do chroot slash sysroot like the system has said. Um, Launch into no such. Okay, I don't know why this is not working. Okay, but that's fine. I've done it several times and it has worked. Or maybe I'm not just getting the right command because that thing has gone off the screen. Okay, so this is how you're going to recover your system. Let's look at the other. She's going to say exit. Let's look at the other way, which is skipping the first option and entering the root shell. I mean a rescue shell by ourselves. So I'm going to go to troubleshooting again, and I'm going to go to rescue a Red Hat Enterprise Linux system. So I'm just going to expand this again. So I'm going to wait for the system to boot up. Now that the system is up, so now I can do 3 to skip to shell, and you can see that it has taken us to rescue shell, and I can press enter to enter the shell. So now if I do lsblk, if I do for example cut etc fstab file, you can see that there is nothing here, and that's because this is still the live environment. And if I do lsblk, you can see here that, let me try and take this up a bit. So if I do lsblk, you can see here that I have some disk being mounted, and if you're used to working with this, you will just know where your damaged, what the disk of your damaged OS. Maybe except you have a lot of disk. Sometimes you might have a lot of disk and you might not quickly know where it is, except to do some findings, which I will also show you how to do. But when looking at this, I already know that this is my live environment. This mount point is for my live environment. Of course, I have not yet mounted the bad operating system, so I can't even have it as a mount point. So when looking at it, I already know that the NVMe one is the bad OS, which I'm going to mount as the data disk, right? And you can see the size too. And when looking at it, you see that this NVMe one P1 is the boot partition, while this is the root partition. And yeah, sometimes you might want to repair the boot partition, you might want to do some things there. Yeah, you can always mount the boot partition and the root partition depending on what you want to do. So for example, I'm just going to make a directory. I can say make directory slash repair, and then I can mount this dev nvme on1p1 on slash repair. You can see that this is mounted. If I do df image, you can see that it's been mounted. And of course, if I do lsblk, of course, you can see that it's been mounted. And then if I go to cd slash repair, for example, and I do ls, you can see that this is my boot files, right? So this is in case you want to work with the boot directory. So I'm just going to mount this. It's going to say you mount slash repair. So again, if I do lsblk, I want to work with the root file system because I want to either edit the fstab file or do some other corrections to bring up my system. So let's do something. Let's say we want to mount. This is not going to get mounted, but then let me just show you. Say you want to mount the root file system and say slash repair. You can see that this is not mounting, and that's because it is a logical volume, and that's why it's not going to be mounted. So what we need to do in this case is to look for that logical volume and mount that logical volume. So I can just do PVS. You can see that I have one physical volume here. If I do LVS, I have two logical volumes. And yeah, I already know which is which because when looking at the size and root RHEL, I already know that that's my root file system. But again, let's say your disk is just named anyhow, and you really want to know your root file system, what it is and what to mount. Of course, when you do PVS and you look at the PV, so you can just, do PV display to get more information and even use the -m option and say /dev slash nvme o n 1 p2. You can see the information for this physical volume, and mere looking at it, you would even see that 29 gig. When we did LSBLK, the size was 29 gig, I think, right? So you can see the information here, and when you even come to the physical segment, you can now see the real logical volume, the name of the logical volume, which is DevRel root. And then I can decide to mount this logical volume. So you can see mount slash dev slash rel slash root under slash repair, for example. And then you can see that it's saying that this does not exist. And that's because most times we would need to activate our logical volume. And to do that, I can do VGS just to see. So it's just like when you're running your normal logical volume commands, right? That's what you're doing basically. And then if I do VGS rather, you can see the volume groups. I can just do VG scan. You can see that it has found real volume group, and then I can just activate by doing VG change -ay real. So you can see that two logical volumes is now in this logic is now in this two logical volumes is now in this volume group, right? I can now then try to mount it again. You can see that it's not mounted. So if I do LSBLQ, it's mounted. If I do DFI finish, it's mounted. And if I go to CD slash repair, which means that my bad OS is now in this directory. So if I do ls, you can see that I can see every file here. And if I do cat etc fs tab file, oops. Okay, yeah, that's because um that's the absolute path. So I'm just going to say cat etcfs tab file. I'm already in this directory, so it should be etcfs tab file. And now you can see my fs tab file. If I need to make some changes, I can make some changes. If I do ls, if I even you can see the root file system too as well. So if I go to cd root, if I need to make some changes, I can make some changes, right? And if it is for the boot too, if I go to cd boot, okay, there's no boot, and that's because we already mounted that. I showed you how to mount that. So this is how you can repair your bad operating system. Oops. Okay. You can actually go to CD boot. Yeah, CD boot. Yeah, but there's nothing here really because it has a different partition. So this is how, and I've shown you how to get those partitions. And again, while navigating, while trying to get your real logical volume, you might get to use commands like lvm disk scan to scan. You might get to use the commands like lv display. These are the day-to-day commands you use to manage your logical volume. You might get to use the command lvm lvs dash dash all, right? So this is the commands you should just know, you should know how to use them. All right, so this is for the Red Hat system, and let's check for the Ubuntu lovers. Let's check how to do this, how to boot to single user mode with other methods and with the rescue media on Ubuntu system. So in Red Hat, we looked at the three different methods at which we can the other three different methods apart from the ones we've looked at in which we can boot to the single user mode. And we looked at the first, second, and third method. I remember I mentioned that the first method and the second method will not work for the Ubuntu system. So another way to boot into the single user mode for Ubuntu system is to use this third method, and that's what we're going to do now. So I'm just going to reboot the system. So at the point where it's booting up, I'm going to press escape key. Oops, the system was faster than I did press the escape key. So I'm going to reboot the system again so that I can press the escape key. Right. So now that I've been able to press the escape key and to edit the kernel line, I'm going to on this Ubuntu line here, I'm going to press the letter E to edit. And I'm going to come to the Linux line. So here I'm going to scroll down to the Linux line. So here under the Linux line, at the end of the line, I'm going to add init initialize equals slash bin slash bash. I'm going to press Ctrl X to boot to the single user mode. So let's see if it's going to take us to the emergency single user mode or the rescue single user mode. All right, so we have a shell already. And did it mention anything about emergency or rescue? You can just do one level to even check where we are. Unknown, so that means we are in the emergency mode. So the next thing I'm going to do is to verify the root file system if it is mounted as read write or read only. So I can just do mount. You can see that it's mounted as read only, and I have to remount it as read write before I can do anything. And to do that, I can just use the command mount. And the good thing is also is mounted on the root file system and not sysroot. So I can just say mount hyphen o remount remount oops remount read write on the root file system mount hyphen o remount. Oops, okay, this is remount read write mount hyphen o remount comma read write. What's happening? Okay. Okay, it's actually remounted. I wasn't reading this well. You can see that it's remounted, and if I do mount, guys, I think I'm tired. Had a long day today at work. So mount, and now you can see that I have the read write permission on the root file system. So at this point, I can do what I want to do. So let's say I want to reset the root password, right? I can do this, and then I can reset the root password. I can do cat etc fstab fstab file. So this is how I can recover my system from this mode. And now let's look at how to use the rescue media how to use the rescue media to recover your OS if it's damaged. Before we look at using the rescue media, I just also want to quickly mention that on Ubuntu, you also have the advanced options for Ubuntu. Uh, yeah, I don't think I've mentioned this. So you can also use here. You can also recover a root password using this advanced options for Ubuntu. So if I come here and I press enter, you can see that I have Ubuntu with Linux, this generic recovery mode. So on the recovery mode here, on that kernel line, I can press enter and it's going to take me to that recovery mode. Yeah, and that's why I love Ubuntu. I really, even though I work with more of Red Hat flavor, I really love Ubuntu. I work with Ubuntu too, but I'm beginning to like Ubuntu a lot. So I can come to, oops, this is showing a lot of stuff on the screen, but just focus on where the red line is. This is clean dpkg fsck to check off our systems grub to update grub ruler network root. So root is saying drop to root shell prompt. So I'm going to press enter to drop to this prompt, and then it's saying that we're having an option to give root password for maintenance or press Ctrl D to continue. So I'm going to give root password for maintenance. Oops. Okay. I don't think I can remember the password. Anyways, um, since I want to continue, so I'm just going to press Ctrl D. That is going to take me back here. So I'm going to come back to drop to root shell prompt. Enable networking, update grub, check all. Yeah, this is it. Drop to root shell prompt. Give root password for maintenance. Yes. Alright, so I'm in and then I can do some maintenance activity. However, I'm giving the root password. Um, I think there should be some method here where I don't have to give in the root password. Trying to see. Let me do exit. Resume normal boot, clean, try to make free space, tpkg, repair broken packages, check off our systems, root, drop to root shell prompt. Yes. Press Ctrl D to continue. Okay. Apparently, I'm not. There's something I want to get here, but maybe when I remember, I will let you guys know. Apparently, I'm not getting it. Apparently, I'm not getting it. Okay, so let's look at how to use the rescue media. I know there's something I want to get here. Enable networking, update group. I should be able to recover my root password somewhere here. I can't. Anytime I remember, guys, I'll just let you know. I should be able to give root password for maintenance. Okay. All right, guys. Let's look at using the rescue media. So with the rescue media, I'm just going to power on this to firmware so that I can boot the damaged system in codes. So we can boot it with the live CD or ISO image. So shift plus the CD-ROM should come first, and I can say F10 to save and exit. Just going to make this bigger a bit. How am I seeing language here? Okay, I think I've pressed. Okay, so we can see here we have install Ubuntu server, install Ubuntu server with this test memory, boot from first hard disk. So we're going to do install Ubuntu server. So I'm just going to pause the video, and when this is up, I'm going to resume the video. Okay, now that this is booted up, then I need to press Ctrl Alt F2 to take me to the shell. Now that I've been able to press Ctrl Alt F2, you can see that I am in the rescue shell. Let me see what shell I am in. If I do run level, okay, I'm actually in the graphical.target mode. That's fine for Ubuntu. So here now, what we can do is to mount the bad file system. So if I do LSBLK, for example, you can see our original system here. So if I do LVS, okay, you can we're seeing running as a node, so I can do sudo LVS. You can see the root file system here. And so what we can do is, of course, if I do cat etc file, this is not going to be the damaged system that want to repair fstar file. So you can see what we have here. So what we need to do is to mount the root file system. And to do that, I can just say mount. Let me make a directory, make directory, let's say slash repair of sudo bang bang. So now I've been able to make the directory, so I can now say man slash dev slash Ubuntu Ubuntu VG slash Ubuntu slash VG slash Ubuntu dash LV under slash repair. Only root can do this, so sudo bang bang. So now if I do lsblk, you can see that it's been mounted under slash repair. And of course, if I do df-h, you can also see that the so-called damaged OS is been mounted as the data disk under this directory, while our live ISO image is our OS disk in this case. So if I go to cd slash repair, and then if I do ls, you can see that I have my system here, and that's why if I do cat etc fstar file, I can see the original fstar file. So if I need to repair the system, do whatever thing I want to do to bring my system back to life, this is how I can use the rescue media to do that. So thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like, share, comment. When you do this, you encourage us to do more. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.